guys, welcome back to the Gaelic Gridiron podcast, the number one American football podcast in Ireland. And with me today is the head of the NFL's International Player Pathway Program, James Cook. James, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
James, I suppose first of all, tell us, to get started, how did you end up in the position you're in today as the man behind the NFL's International Player Pathway Program?
So, because it started when I was about 12 years old or so, kind of channel flicking, came across American football, had absolutely no idea what it was, but thought it looked cool and interesting and something I wanted to learn more about. That turned into a bit of a love affair with the sport and turned into playing myself. I played here in the UK at a club level and also for the national team for about 10 years. Fortunately, got the opportunity to meet some people who were starting a bit of an experimental pilot project called the NFL International Player Pathway Program out of our London office through that kind of British American football community. I played quarterback myself, and although the opportunities to get involved were few and far between, the one thing I could do was throw a ball. And so when they wanted to work players out, they'd say, James, meet us at this location. We can't pay you for your time. We might buy you lunch afterwards. And I'd rock up and I'd throw the ball and help with the workouts. And that was all I needed, really. It was fun. I loved it. And after a while, Adam Dirty, who'd kind of started up the program along with OCU and Euro and Will Bryce, got a job coaching in the NFL. An opportunity came up and they brought me on board. So that was 6 years ago, and working kind of in an assistant role in those early years, and been fortunate enough to step into this role more recently. So it's been a wild ride, but I'm certainly very grateful for the program and the work that everyone's doing at NFL UK.
So you had an American football background before you got into the position as a player. How did you end up playing over there? I mean, how did that whole thing come about?
So it literally was just stumbling across the sport. I think how a lot of people do. I just seeing it on TV, and I think it was a college football game that I came across, and I remembered the channel number and got in from school the next day, plugged it in straight away, and wanted to kind of learn more, and realized pretty quickly I wanted to be a quarterback, as most people do. Fortunately, I was able to continue with that a little longer than most, but yeah, and then just I think through enjoying watching the game and slowly becoming a fan of it, I realized very quick I wanted to play it. I didn't want to just watch. My grandparents actually, they worked and have now retired out in the US, and so if we'd go there on holiday, I sort of started to have a little introduction to the teams. They're just outside Tampa, so I started following the Buccaneers, and just kind of just fell in love with it, really. And through playing, had some unbelievable experience. I've traveled. Like I said, I played for the national team, met some of my closest friends doing that. And I think going from that background of playing and being a player in international and not coming from the US myself, I think has really helped in this role.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've been in the position now, with the league and the program for, I suppose, the guts of 6 years now. Who are some of the most talented players that you've seen come through the program?
I think, like year one, like the first player I ever worked with was Christian Wade, who I think still it's hard to find someone with that natural ability, just to catch the ball, his acceleration, his instincts as a ball carrier. Yeah. Like the world has seen it in rugby, and it was no different in his time with us. I think certainly you don't find those every year. So that was great. And someone like Jakob Johnson, who has played a long time now, he's had a good number of years in the league, first with the Patriots, then with the Raiders. Jakob wasn't physically the most unbelievable, talented, ridiculous athlete you'll ever find, but just sheer work ethic and understanding his value, highly intelligent player, really tough. Again, traits like that you don't find very often. And then zooming into this year, the kind of one of the big headliners for us, obviously Lewis Rees-Zammit, which I'm sure we'll get into, but also Travis Clayton, who was a guy that really came out of nowhere, ended up being a draft pick.
Yeah.
And the big thing that I've said to teams, and teams have said to me, is that you don't find a Travis every year. You really don't. I think I've now been doing this long enough to know that. So I've been very fortunate to work with some great athletes, but some unbelievable people as well. I think that's been the thing I've been most proud of, and also most fortunate to do.
And how has the program evolved in the time that you've been there? It seems to have grown and grown more every year. Is it a case now that there's more awareness with NFL teams of the resources available to them through the IPP, or is it a case that it's just grown in general?
Yeah, I mean both. So I think when we first started doing this, and certainly the first year or so I was involved, we would still, at that point, we were trying to prove that there was something here. It was the experiment, and it was, there's something in this. It's worth doing. It's worth investing in. And we're now at the point where the experiment worked. That now it's time to push on and do more. Um, the I think from a team, I think that's how the kind of the league is now looking at it. Is like, yeah, this works. Let's do more of it. I think how the teams look at it. I had a few comments this year from scouts and people within team buildings who said to me, we basically look at this program now like a small college, like a small school.
Yeah.
We have to send a scout here at some point to come through and see what's on offer at the IPP. Otherwise we're going to miss out, and we're going to miss out on a Travis Clayton, on a Lewis Rees-Zammit,
Yeah.
On a Patrick Murtaugh, and so that's, I think, the ultimate compliment we can get, and the best feedback we can get is that we don't want to miss out on this, and we have to be there early, and so that sets us up in good stead for 2025.
So what does that growth look like in your mind as the top man? I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to, I suppose, your leadership and your guidance. So you mentioned there, and that's great to hear that scouts are now viewing this as a small college, as you say. But what does that kind of growth? What's the next level for the IPP into 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I think for me, it's dialing in on the things that we can control and doing them at a higher level than we have in the past. I think we were over the moon with 6 players going to teams this year, 5 free agents and a draft pick. We really were. We also took 15 with us to that camp. And so I want us to be in a position sooner rather than later where, you bring 15, you send 15, and other teams are like, hey, you ran out of guys. We need more. So we want more players, better players. And that comes down to how good we are at evaluation, where we're getting to around the world, the kind of athletes we're finding, but then also when we get them, what we do with them so that they're better prepared. They're more confident when they go into NFL buildings. And ultimately, our biggest marker of success, and always has been, is players playing on Sundays. It's active players. We're not trying to just funnel practice squad players into the NFL who are going to hang around for a year or two and then disappear. We're trying to find real contributing starting players that are getting voted into Pro Bowls, that are playing in Super Bowls. And that's ultimately the goal. That's what we're trying to do.
It certainly is lofty goals, and it's great to see. You mentioned Travis Clayton there. You mentioned Lewis Rees-Zammit. I mean, this was certainly one of the most high, if not the most high-profile class ever, I think, in terms of global recognition, and especially here on this side of the Atlantic, in the UK and in Ireland. So, tell me about the process that goes into, and of course, I should mention our own Irish contingent, of course. But what is the process that goes into scouting or finding those players to fill that? How do you identify them?
Yeah, it's evolved over the years, really. And still, to be honest, it's all about relationships and understanding where talent might be around the world. I think one of the biggest things that we've learned in our time doing this, when you look at the players that have come through the IPP and not only ended up on rosters, but gone on to be starting players for their teams, a lot of them aren't playing American football. They're playing other sports. They're coming from other codes. And I think getting understanding for us, like, what skill sets are needed in today's NFL and where do we find those skill sets. And I think Ireland was a great example of that this year. We had never worked with kickers or punters before, and so, but one of the things we knew we wanted to find was exceptional leg talent, exceptional leg strength. And when we kind of looked around the world and looked close to home, we found Gaelic football and thought, there could be something in this. There's transferable skill sets here, and we need to do that. And I think we did that, and I think we've proven there's something there and want to do more. And I think that applies to everywhere. So it's really getting connected to coaches, federations, people on the ground who know these sports and these countries better than we do, and letting them educate us so that we know where to go back to in future years. We know what did and didn't work. I spent more and more time in Australia over the past few years. We just sent an Aussie rules player to the Jags. And I think he is exactly the kind of athlete and human being and character that we're looking for. But watching AFL, there's not hundreds of him, so understanding where we're looking, what and exactly what it is we're looking for, that's been a challenge, building the profile of the individual you're looking for, because then once you know that, you know where to look.
Actually, there's a question that I've had, and hopefully you'll be able to provide some clarification for me. I've found a sort of an answer online, but I'm not entirely convinced. So Travis Clayton got drafted by the Bills this year in the 7th round.
I know what's coming now.
Sorry?
I know what's coming now. This is the question I get
Yeah.
asked.
You probably know my question. How did he how was he draft eligible, but the likes of
Yeah.
Charlie Smith and Lewis weren't? They got signed. They got signed pretty much in the middle of the process, really.
Yeah. So essentially, the kind of draft, the eligibility system for the NFL is really built around the college system, the US college system, because
Mm,
that's the traditional development pipeline for athletes entering the NFL. And so when it comes to international, it kind of is a little bit different. But essentially, in very simple terms, it's how far removed you are from your high school graduation or your high school equivalent graduation. Once, if you attend a US college, your timeline changes a bit, but obviously none of our
yeah.
guys did. So once you're 3 years exactly removed from that, you become draft eligible, and anything slightly over that, you're just regarded as a free agent. So it's kind of, to a degree, fitting a square peg in a round hole, because we're trying to do something that the NFL and the American ecosystem, hasn't really accounted for in the
Mm.
past, but getting better and smoother at it year on year. And so that's really the short answer as to why Travis was draft eligible. No other reason.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I have to be honest, that was bugging me for the longest time. So I appreciate you clearing that up for me. What are your like? I mean, there's two massively talented individuals there in Lewis and Travis. I mean, what are your expectations personally for them and what they can achieve on NFL rosters this season?
I think our expectations for them are all the things I kind of alluded to before, are all the things that are in their control. And that's the thing that we would talk about every single day in our camp. Sometimes that final roster decision and where they sit within the team is a decision that's not up to them. But the things
Mm.
that they can control are, we want them to be the earliest people to every single team meeting. We want them to arrive earlier. We want them to stay late. We want them to have great attention to detail. And that was something we talked about a lot, and being uncommon, and this theme that came through our camp. I think, truthfully, the teams, we didn't make the team sign him. We didn't make the Bills draft Travis. We didn't make the Saints sign Charlie. The teams want him to be there. And I think the fact that they're there in the first place is evidence enough that they've got a chance. And that's all you can ask for in this league. You can only ever ask for one more day, and they've been given that. So I think, in short, I think the sky's the limit. I think when the starting left tackle of the Philadelphia Eagles hadn't played the game, 6 years ago, and he's now making $22 million a year and doing it better than most people in the NFL. I think once you see that, I think it's very hard to say that anything can't be done on this program.
I think what's unique about your position, James, is not only are you obviously you're the man in charge of the whole program, but you're not just the ideas man. You're there in the practical sense as well. I mean, you are embedded with them in the camp in IMG and throughout the whole process. I mean, is that something that's an important part of your role? Is the kind of hands-on element?
Yeah, I think it's essential. I don't think you can do it otherwise. It's a big commitment, and you're out there and you're living with them. But I think you have to know who these guys are as people, what challenges they might run into because of maybe character traits or personality. Or
Mm.
I think one of the big things that came through this year was, I think when Lewis joined, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you don't want to treat him differently," and blah blah blah. You don't want to treat you want to treat everyone differently, because they're all very different people and they all have very different needs. And I think understanding the person and also the player, what we're asking them to do is so incredibly hard. I think if we're not putting the investment in on our side and saying, look, I'm going to be with you every step of the way, it's really hard to ask that of them. And so I believe that we need to be embedded. And it's not just me, it was other staff on our team, Dom, George, people that really were like, for these 3 months, I'm going to put everything in my life to one side and just be here with you guys to help you. Because, yeah, and I think when we have success on the program, I think it's easy for people to kind of forget how ridiculous it is. It's not lost on us how crazy it is what we're trying to do. We're trying to send people who've never played a sport before, and at 21, 22, 23 years old, try and play at the very highest level in arguably the most competitive sports league on the planet. We do think that's mad. Don't worry, that's not lost on us. So if we're going to do that, the players have to know we're with them every step of the way.
It was also a historic IPP class in the sense it was the first time that not only did you have specialists in kickers and punters, but you also had the Irish contingent. So you had the likes of Charlie Smith, who obviously is now with the Saints, and we have really, really high expectations for him at home. I can tell you that. But you also had the likes of Rory Begg and Mark Jackson and Darrell Leader. How did those athletes get on your radar for this year?
So, like I said, kickers and punters was new for this year. And although we've worked with a lot of position groups, and I myself have personally over the last 6 years, I've never worked with kickers and punters. And my view on this from the outset was if I try and fake it and convince everyone that I'm an expert in kickers and punters, I'm going to get this very wrong. So I need to get people involved that know it. And it's not, it's a very niche skill set. It's a very specific knowledge base. And so got in touch with Tig Leader, who obviously based out in Galway. And when we were looking at this kicker thing, we were like, look, how do we bring this together quite quickly? And where do we begin? You know, when your remit is everywhere outside of the US and Canada, where do you start? So got on a conversation with Tig, and we talked about the GAA and his belief that there are transferable traits, and we watched stuff, and he sent me film, and he actually came into the office, and we had meetings, and I think our mindset became in year one, you know, see a little, see a lot. If we try and tell ourselves we're trying to find 5 people from the entire planet, we're going to get lost. But actually, you know, if we dial it in on a kind of a small radius, and we did run a workout in Europe with people from all over the place. We had someone from India work out for us. I went down to Australia and ran a separate workout. So we really did our due diligence on it. But Tig was definitely a big part of educating us and bringing me into the fold with the kicking. And I've learned a lot in the last year about that position. And it is a very, very different evaluation to every other position we work with. But one thing that was consistent between all the position groups is we're looking for outliers. We're looking for exceptional people and exceptional skill sets, whether that's an exceptionally big offensive lineman or an exceptionally strong leg as a kicker. It's the same principle. And so with that as our guide, we went out and we ran a workout. We met with the likes of Rory and with Mark and with Charlie and Dara, and they fit the bill for that. And to be honest, for what was put together quickly and what was a pilot in year one, we're completely thrilled with not only the people, the quality of person that came on this year in those 5, but the results we've had, and I think the foundation that it sets for us moving forward with that position.
And you mentioned you talk about outliers there. I mean, traits that set them apart. Were there any particular traits that these athletes displayed that made you kind of go, "Oh yeah, we want to have them. There's potential here for these guys to be successful in our program and to potentially get signed by an NFL team," which has transpired.
Yeah, I think the really obvious one that's easy to assess early on is just sheer leg strength, and I think we put these guys out in the field and they really barely kicked a football before ever, like that shape of ball. Obviously the kickoff rules have all now changed, but under the old kickoff rules in the NFL, put it on the 35-yard line and we just said, look, kick it out the back of the end zone. And they were doing it pretty comfortably. So we knew, right, there's something. Like we might have to fill in a lot of other blanks, but the guys can kick. And then I think what was interesting when the new kickoff rule did come into play, it's I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but it's a very different style of kick. You're basically trying to pin the ball in a very specific location on the field.
Yeah.
And when we were in Indianapolis at the Combine working out with a lot of the college kickers, they were really adjusting to it. They weren't used to it. It was a very different style. Whereas Rory and Mark, the GAA goalkeepers, and Charlie were like, yeah, I do this all the time. You know, line it up. You know, you want me to drop it on the 1 or the 2-yard line? Which one do you want? You know, and so not only did the leg strength come through, but just leg talent. You know, and if you just say to them, like, here's a ball, kick it, drop it on this penny over there at the other end of the field, they can do that because they've grown up doing it. And so that really showed then. And I think that outlier term extends with those 5 even more than the physical traits. You know, I think Mark Jackson has uncommon attention to detail and professionalism, like the notes he takes, how seriously he takes it. You don't find that very often. And Charlie's ability to regulate his emotions and really delve into the mental side of kicking, which is a huge, huge thing in that league. That those things stood out the more we worked with them. So we were thrilled, like I said, with the 5 that we ended up bringing in and saw those traits, I think, early on enough with them to feel confident about bringing them on board.
So, given the success that the Irish contingent, the Irish cohort has had this year, do you foresee yourselves now specifically sourcing leg talent or NFL potential from Ireland as part of future classes?
Why not? You know, I say the same thing all the time. We'll go where the talent is. And I think if 2024 has shown us anything, is that there is talent in Ireland, and we'd be crazy not to go back and try and explore that further and go deeper and do it better than we have in the past. You know, but then if that leg talent ends up being in Poland, we'll go there. If it ends up being in Japan or China or South Africa, we'll go there. So, no, I think it was a really great statement. I think for athletes in Ireland, Um, that are coming from there, but also I'm of the mindset, there might be an offensive or a defensive lineman living in Ireland as well. They're not just going to be kickers. And I think the big philosophy of this program is that these people are everywhere that we're looking for. They're hard to find. There's not loads of them, but a planet full of 8 billion people, we shouldn't be sourcing talent from one country to play in this league that has such exceptional demands of athleticism. So the further we can get out, the better.
I suppose to kind of wrap things up, James, what specifically do you think is the kind of the key, or what do you have in mind for taking this now to the next level, taking the IPP to the next level, spreading the word around the globe that this is a viable path for non-US or non-Canadian athletes who have dreamed of making the NFL to do so?
I think the key is now, will be in the future, and always has been the players themselves. We do a lot of work behind the scenes, but ultimately, how far this program has come and how far it will continue to go, that always goes back to the players. And as much as we're very proud of the work that we've done, we are in this position now, not because of people like me, but because of people like Jordan Mailata, because of people like F.A. Obada, like Jakob Johnson, the guys that have come and done it. They've allowed us to open doors for more people, in the same way that Charlie and Lewis and Travis and Pat and Byron and all the guys that went to teams this year, they're opening doors for the next group. I can't do that. They can do that, because once they get to a team, there's nothing I can do. They're there. They're in OTAs right now. And the success they have, the time they see on the field, it's all down to them. And so to take this to the next level, it's the same model that we took it to this level. It's investing in good people that work hard, who are uncommon in how they approach things, and putting our faith in them. And I think we're right to put our faith in them. I think they're going to do great things for us.
James, one final question. It's one that I like to ask everyone who comes on the podcast. So hopefully you don't find it too tricky. You've obviously, you've been playing or involved in American football for a large portion of your life. I mean, both as a player, as a fan, and now as a professional, I suppose. Can you pick out for me one favorite memory of yours from your entire time being involved in the NFL?
That is a great question. I think one stands out in particular. I have some of my fondest memories. In fact, when I say this to like kids playing the game all the time, I've been able to travel the world. I've been to huge NFL events and done all this stuff. Some of my best memories are being 14 years old and playing with my boys and enjoying the game at that age. I think it's really hard to replace those. But one in the NFL that stands out in particular, I remember 2021. It was our pro day. We were at the University of Florida. And we had, it was a big pro day for Florida. NFL Network were there. It was the year Kyle Pitts was coming out. Kadarius Toney was coming out. Kyle Trask was there. So there was all this attention on the Florida players. And we kind of jumped in on the workout, our IPP group. We had two benches, the IPP guys doing the bench press, the IPP guys and the Florida guys. And I remember one of our players, Samus, went up on the bench press and he was lifting, and our little group of these weird little outcasts from all around the world just went crazy and just drowned out everyone else in attendance and the Florida bench. And slowly the scouts were kind of coming from that line over to our line. And I remember almost tearing up a little bit, and just from now on, we always make it clear with our players when we go into college pro days, like we're not here with them, they're here with us, take this over and make it our day. And I remember just feeling very proud to be a part of this program and to be associated with those guys, because the genuine love they had for each other. And I think we've seen that in years that have followed as well. It's very inspiring, and I'm very fortunate to be even remotely close to that.
That is absolutely fantastic. Well, James, listen, thank you again for your time. It was like fascinating to hear about what goes on behind the scenes. Like, you're doing fantastic work with the IPP. Looking forward to seeing how much it grows in the next couple of years. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, James.